Does this feel like deja vu? Specifically, it feels like 2018 again. We are once again witnessing the extreme weaponization of anti Semitism. On Wednesday, two people were stabbed by a bus stop in Golders Green. The two victims were Shlomo Rand, 34, and Moshe Shine, 76. The suspect has now been identified as Issa Solomon, who has been known to the police since 2008. He was referred to Prevent in 2020, yet just after 6 weeks, his case was closed. The police have said that Solomon, 45, has a history of mental illness, confirmed by the fact that he left a psychiatric hospital just a few days ago. Now, thankfully, both of the victims are not in a life-threatening condition. The incident, which has been called a terrorist attack, shows that Jewish people are at risk in this country. But since this attack, we are witnessing once again the incredibly damaging, toxic, and frankly dangerous weaponization from which the target of politicians and the media are not the far right, who historically have been the main anti-Semitic force of this country, but the left. Muslims, protesters supporting Palestine, and the only current Jewish party leader, Zack Polanski. Don't you even dare pretend that your Green Party isn't stoking the hatred that results in this attack. That is Julie Hartley-Brewer responding to Zack Polanski, who said, horrendous attack in Golders Green, thinking of the victims, their families, and everyone who will once again be shaken by this attack. Thank you to all of those involved with the emergency response. Robert Jenrick says, appalling news this morning. My thoughts are with the victims who are now in critical care. Last week, Zack Polanski said there is a discussion to be had about whether the rampant anti-Semitism we're seeing has merely created a perception of unsafety. It is real and it is violent. In the last few months, synagogues have had bricks thrown at them, ambulances set on fire, school kids assaulted, and today 2 Jewish people stabbed in the streets. It won't be stopped unless it is rooted out by every section of our society and the perpetrators are properly punished. I always find it bizarre, the right-wing politicians who don't seem to care about any other minority really care about anti-Semitism. Now, Lib Dem leader Ed Davey has said that the Greens are akin to Labour under Jeremy Corbyn in regards to anti-Semitism.
We've got to come together and get rid of this scourge, which is so appalling and means that British Jews, so many of them, don't feel safe in our country, which is just unacceptable. So yes, we need to get more resources to the police and make sure that they are working with the Community Security Trust and other Jewish groups to keep our Jewish community safe. We do need to deal with those elements that are stirring this up. We've focused actually for a number of years now on Iran. There's been a number of incidents and quite a lot of evidence that Iran-linked organizations and people have been stirring up hatred against Jewish people and have actually attacked Jewish people. And that's why we've long called for the IRGC to be prescribed. I'm not suggesting, Kate, that would sort everything, but it's been really unacceptable that successive governments have not prescribed the IRGC when there has been this clear link between Iranian activity and anti-Semitism.
We've talked about that link, and we had the government on earlier saying they will fast track some new legislation. So potentially we could see that proscription, although Dan Jarvis wouldn't go that far. But do you think there's also a problem in civil society, in the way that we think and talk about Jewish people, in the way that we feel about Judaism in this country, and on the left of politics too? I mean, you know, the Green Party's deputy leader is in the paper today saying he wants to take legal action against his own party because he feels that the expulsion or the prevention of some members from standing or from being members because of alleged anti-Semitic remarks is wrong. Is there a problem on the left?
Well, I'm afraid there has been over a number of years. We saw that in the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn. It looks like we're seeing that, unfortunately, in the Green Party. All political parties have to clean up their act. And when we've ever seen anti-Semitism in our party, we've clamped down it hard and fast. But I'm afraid some parties don't seem to do that in the way that they ought to. And so there is a problem in some parts of society. But I have to tell you, I think there are many people who abhor what's happening and who want us to take tougher action, and all the actions, whether it's on the police, whether it's against the IRGC or other action. So I think the vast majority of British people in civil society are ashamed that this is happening and want more action.
Once again, we are hearing pro-Israel voices to call for the shutdown of so-called hate marches.
So there are the protest marches, protests with a small p. They're not protest marches, they're hate marches that call for globalising the intifada and from the river to the sea, which is basically the eradication of Israel and therefore the Jewish people that live there. We've heard the hate that proliferates on these marches. They need to be banned. I absolutely agree with the right to peaceful protest. As you can see from the rallies about anti-Semitism that have taken place, those have been peaceful gatherings, but the marches have been an opportunity for hatred to flourish, and politicians and the police often do nothing. So they need to go. Sorry.
Same as always. I mean, going back to what Robert Jenrick said, he said, well, you know, Zack Polanski said that there was a perceived threat of anti-Semitism, and this is part of the problem. He's twisting his words. I mean, Zack Polanski, I think, made the salient point, which is that there is very real anti-Semitism that people are affected by, and there is a perceived threat of anti-Semitism. That's undoubtedly true. The way in which anti-Semitism has been weaponized for years, what that does is create an even more hostile environment. It creates even more fear for the Jewish community on top of the fear they already have. And what these people don't understand, the ones who conflate anti-Semitism and criticisms of Israel, is that they are contributing to the perceived threats, where sometimes there is no anti-Semitism. But when you fill that vacuum of, that's obviously anti-Semitic. Oh, calling Israel or what Israel's doing in Gaza is a genocide, is blood libel. That's adding something about, or adding a perceived threat of anti-Semitism. Zack Polanski was entirely correct. Now, following on from the attack, Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed the nation.
If you stand alongside people who say globalise the intifada, you are calling for terrorism against Jews. And people who use that phrase should be prosecuted. It is racism. Extreme racism, and it has left a minority community in this country scared, intimidated, wondering if they belong.
Words don't mean anything anymore. I mean, Starmer is saying that if you say globalise the intifada, you should be prosecuted. And Starmer's not the only one who said it. We've seen it from people before saying that globalize the intifada means kill all Jews. It means terrorism against all Jews. That's not what it means, right? This is what the word intifada actually means. Intifada is an Arabic word meaning shaking off, commonly translated as an uprising, resistance or rebellion against oppression. It denotes a civil uprising rather than a formal revolution, primarily associated with Palestinian resistance against Israeli occupation, notably in 1987 to 1993 and 2000 to 2005. It is often used for popular movements. Since the Nakba, there have been two intifadas. The first intifada began on the 9th of December 1987. This was an uprising from Palestinians which included a mix of violent and non-violent protests, riots, civil disobedience against the occupied forces. It was the resistance against the brutal Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The second intifada started in 2000. It began as civilian protests in Jerusalem due to Palestinians being met with extreme violence. The conflict escalated, where resistance fighters engaged in shootings, suicide bombings, and military operations. Now, what do you think of the methods of both uprisings? They were in response to the Israeli occupation, which continues today. Globalize the intifada means to fight against the struggle wherever you are in the world. It does not mention Jews whatsoever. Now, the response from this attack by the government has been unprecedented. The Prime Minister hosted an emergency Cobra meeting following the stabbing. Professor of Criminology Steve Hall made this observation. Does the UK usually declare a terrorist attack and national security emergency, which can suspend rights after a non-fatal attack by a mentally ill individual? It took 8 deaths to involve Cobra in 2017, and no national security emergency was declared. Meanwhile, the terrorist threat level has also been upgraded. Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre increased it from substantial to severe. Whilst the recent anti-Semitic attacks have been extremely alarming to say the least, one must ask the question, why hasn't there been the same level of response from the media, the government and the police following other forms of hate crimes? Earlier this week, an LGBT club was set on fire where a 51-year-old from Bletchley was arrested. He has now been released. Or what about Darren Connor, who entered a mosque with an axe and zip ties? But if it's stabbing specifically that the media cares about, why is there silence over this? A peaceful protester was stabbed outside Downing Street during a demonstration against the US and Israel's illegal war against Iran, attended by Iranian activists on opposing sides. Two men who were taking part in an anti-Iranian counter-demonstration stabbed Mohammad Reza, a British Iranian and father of two. Only recently, a video went viral on social media showing similar pro-monarchy protesters swearing at Reza whilst he walked to the station with his children. The stabbing occurred after counter-protesters threatened the main protest with physical violence in full view of the police. Now, it is suspected that the attackers were supporting the Shah. Now, this latest development now puts into question the entire narrative. Beforehand, the media treated this as an act of terrorism. Seemingly, it's been changed to attempted murder. Do video 5B?
Who has been charged with the attempted murder over the stabbings that took place in Golders Green, North London. Two Jewish men there has been remanded in custody after appearing at Westminster Magistrates Court. We'll bring you more on that with our correspondent who has been camped outside Westminster Magistrates Court this morning. So we'll get more with her shortly.
Owen Jones quote tweeted the previous Sky clip and said this. What? He's been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. The third alleged victim is Ismail Hussein. What is the editorial justification for not even stating that it's 3 counts of attempted murder? So, of course, that's Owen pointing out the media ignoring a third victim, Ismail Hussein, with a common name or common Muslim-sounding name in the Muslim community. Of course, we don't know for sure that they are Muslim. But what makes this even more interesting is that Suleiman apparently knew Hussein. Suleiman is also accused of attempting to murder Ismail Hussein in a knife attack at Hussein's flat in Southwark, South London, earlier the same day. Hussein was somebody that Suleiman had known for approximately 20 years. It is worth pointing out that Suleiman was stabbed in his home, or Suleiman made the stabbing of Ismail in the home, and then Suleiman travelled 45 minutes to an hour to Golders Green. Of course, Golders Green has a high Jewish community, so we can't discount that it's not anti-Semitic, but it adds far more layers and nuance. But media reporting on such incidents drive a powerful narrative. Responsible reporting is a must, which has been severely lacking. Just look at this headline from LBC. 100 firefighters at the scene after blaze breaks out near North London synagogue. Now, in reality, a residential property caught fire. It just happened to be near a synagogue, which was evacuated. The fire is not believed to be deliberate. And interestingly, a mosque is also situated on the same road, but no mention in the headline. Michael Rosen appeared on Jeremy Vine with a very refreshing and thoughtful take. No 5C? Okay. Let me explain. Michael Rosen basically said, social media is really, really bad because we keep jumping to conclusions. What's happening? I'm not sure what the motivation is anymore. What we'll do is we'll add it into the uploads afterwards. But it was a good clip because of all the noise of people shouting at each other, coming to conclusions. Michael Rosen basically was like very calm and collective. It's a good clip. It was on Jeremy Vine. If you want to, just YouTube Jeremy Vine, Michael Rosen. Helena. More and more facts are emerging, and some people are even doubting that this is a terror attack. What are your thoughts?
Well, we don't know. The reality is that we don't know. We have no inclination on motive whatsoever. We know that there was obviously another murder previously that day. Like, it could have been his mate trying to stop him from doing a terror attack, and they just attacked him in response. Like, we literally do not know anything about this man's motive other than 2 targets were Jewish and 1 target was someone who was known to Suleiman. So that's literally all we know. And I think it is irresponsible that anyone is trying to infer definitively what the motive was without any of the information, without any information on a perceived motive at all. No interview stuff from the suspect has been released by the police. We are totally in the dark. And the fact that it's led us already to the point at which we're talking about, like, in massive restrictions on free speech, on free assembly, is completely insane. I feel like I have stepped into the twilight zone. That whilst, of course, I think that broadly talking about more funding for protection for Jewish people, given that even if you don't take this attack into account, there was obviously the Heaton Park, the synagogue attack, you've had more anti-Semitic incidents happen in other parts of the country, both in London and beyond, means that I think that providing extra funding is perfectly reasonable as a response, and the Prime Minister can show solidarity with Jewish people on a day in which it's clear that their safety cannot be guaranteed. The idea that this has become a terrorist attack and also is getting us to the point of going, you know what's really important? Let's talk about Israel and Palestine. Well, hang on a minute. No. First of all, the reality is, of course, is that Israel and the Jewish community are not the same thing. Far from it. You'd be anti-Semitic to suggest as such. The fact that it has turned into a discussion about the Middle East conflict is totally unreasonable. It's completely unreasonable. It's driving the discourse down the plug hole, as far as I can see. I was watching Question Time this afternoon, and the first question was about, okay, what can be done to protect Jewish people? And we spent half an hour talking about council candidates, and we spent the rest of it talking about Palestine protests. And this is not the important part of this discussion, far from it, because in reality we need to talk about the rising increase of hate crimes against Jewish people, but of course against other groups as well. Like, there was a homophobic attack in Bristol. A gang of people attacked what was perceived to be a homophobic attack in Bristol a few days ago. No reporting of this, no Cobra meeting, no calls of solidarity with the LGBTQ plus community from neither the Prime Minister nor from the media, because of course that there are certain kinds of bigotry that are acceptable as far as the media are concerned. It does seem to be that the only kind of bigotry that our media will even bother commenting on is when it happens to Jewish people. And obviously, it is correct for them to do so. It's an important fight, the fight against anti-Semitism. But the fact that it takes such a precedence against other things for the warrant such a gigantic national response, again, when we don't even know necessarily whether these people were targeted for being Jewish or not. I suspect it probably is incredibly likely to be the case. I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm thinking that it's probably very likely. But we don't actually know fully. We haven't got full confirmation of this yet. And we're already making huge assumptions and making huge steps and huge leaps in terms of where the discourse is going without full knowledge. Because, again, there's a very easy narrative to be spun, and it's this narrativization that is the problem.
I mean, I agree with you. Like, clearly there needs to be some sort of... I mean, I can see the argument for increasing support for the Jewish community, but I tend to think that, like, all kinds of hate crimes across the board is rising. It's just the attention to just the Jewish community. I mean, do you think potentially calling it a national emergency, having a Cobra meeting, do you think that's disproportionate? Again, it's not... I don't want to downplay the severity of anti-Semitism, but Steve Hall did say there were 8 stabbings and another matter that didn't get a Cobra meeting. So is this disproportionate? Especially if you call a national emergency, some democratic norms could be stripped away.
I mean, I think that the national emergency stuff maybe is going a bit too far, but calling a Cobra meeting when there are acts of political violence, I think, is perfectly reasonable. But I think that if we're going to talk about it, we have to talk about the political violence, the bigoted violence, the hate crime that we're seeing rise across the board. I mean, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of % increases in hate crimes against queer people, and yet no national emergency, no Cobra meeting, no calls from the media to clamp down on rhetoric that's perceived to be homophobic or transphobic or whatever. Like, none of this gets garners the same amount of coverage or as attention. I think broadly, if we're going to have a Cobra meeting, I think is probably warranted given the level of increases in violence that we're seeing. But the fact that it's specifically focused on one community that, sure, it's on the rise specifically because of tensions potentially in the Middle East, but it's not rising any higher than it's rising in other parts of society as well. I think that having a hierarchy of what bigotry is worth commenting on and what isn't, I think is the problem here.
Yeah,
what I will say as well, whilst we're on the subject too, I don't know if anyone knows what's been going on in the right wing in terms of discourse, or had been for the last few years. They railroaded, essentially through posting to policy, the removal of what are known as non-crime hate incidents, which are reports that the police take down in terms of things that could potentially lead to hateful acts that have been said or committed by people but that aren't criminal, to be able to understand people's motivations if they do commit crimes, to understand if they are in some way hateful or in some way motivated by hate and bigotry. The right wing essentially got mad at this because they kept being noted down for non-crime hate incidents against queer people or against Muslims or whatever, and so the government's been forced into removing these in terms of how the police file. And yet this is the perfect thing that we would have needed in terms of someone like Suleiman, to be able to understand his motivations, to be able to know whether or not this was a hate crime or not. Removal of this nuance, removal of this information has led us completely in the dark. And of course, this would be really important given the threat posed to the Jewish community that we know when people have engaged in non-crime hate incidents or whatever. The question, of course, is do you trust the police to note these down correctly or to misconstrue pro-Palestinian sentiment is the issue.